start, Kenneth, you to start. Tell everybody who you are and where you come from and what you do for a living.
Okay, so my name's Kenneth Prange, spelled with a P for Paul, P-R-A-N-G-E. And I'm Scottish, as you can probably hear from my accent. I'm living in Scotland at the moment, but half of the year I live also in Italy with my lovely wife, Angela, who maybe some of you have already met. My studies took me from electrical engineering to naturopathy to Chinese medicine, acupuncture, moxibustion, regressional hypnosis, iridology, ear acupuncture, and Silva mind control. That's according to Jose Silva from Argentina. Today, then, what I do is mostly I teach microbiotics in Spain, Portugal, and the UK. And let's see, what else do I do? I give nutritional consultations along microbiotic and vegan principles. I've studied also Feng Shui, so there's a bit of that in there as well. So that's the things that are in my toolbox. So I'm giving people consultations online or one-on-one with all of the faculties then that I've picked up along the way. So that's initially what I'm doing.
Not very much, just a small amount of treatments that you have to your name.
Well, I've accumulated a few years in age now. So
would you mind, because I didn't realize until I'd met you probably for about 5 years, the story of how you came into macrobiotics. Would you mind briefly touching on that? Because I find that the most fascinating thing about it.
Yes, I can do that. Yeah, I'll keep it short so that it doesn't take too long. So when I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with what is called a hemolytic anemia. That is where the spleen, as a lymphatic organ, is breaking down the red blood cells too quickly and too many of them, which leaves you anemic. This gives you then a yellow color because breaking down the red blood cells releases a lot of hemoglobin into the bloodstream, and that makes you yellow. So I had yellow eyes, yellow skin. At the age of 16 then, my spleen was removed because what it was called then, it was hypersplenism. So the spleen was enlarged because it was always overworking, and it was taking up too much space in my abdomen and causing me pain. And you could actually see a protrusion, a lump then on the left side just under my ribs. So that was removed. In the beginning, that was fine. I started to feel a bit better, but about 2 or 3 months later, my health started to go downhill again. And eventually, I think after about 4 or 5 months, I was diagnosed with an acute lymphatic leukemia, where at that age then, I wasn't told directly from the doctor. The notification was given to my parents, and my parents got the information from the doctor saying there's nothing to do, take him home, give him an easy life, he's going to die. Which they did then. And I wasn't told about that at that time. But I niggled so much my father, and eventually he did say to me that you've got a bad blood disease and there's no therapy for it, because I was wondering why I wasn't getting any medication or therapy for that. So I was very weak. I could hardly even walk in the streets too far without lying down and getting strength back just to walk back home. So one day when I was outside at the church in my town, a school friend walked by, and we waved. We recognized each other, and he came over to me and says, "Oh, you're not looking very well." And I explained to him then what had happened. And he said, "Listen, my older brother has a little book on nutrition, and the first lines in there, I've read a little bit in that book. It says that everything that happens to you can be caused by the food you eat and the lifestyle that you live." And so I asked him if I could have that book, and he said, "Yes, I'll bring it to you tomorrow." And he brought it, and I read it, and I started macrobiotics. It was a book on macrobiotics by George Osawa called Zen Macrobiotics. I started immediately at home on my mother's electric cooker. They thought I was crazy, but they just left me to do what I wanted. And slowly then, after about 3 weeks, I started to feel new energy in my body. After 1 year, I went back to the doctor because I was feeling very well. I was actually going out running. I had abundant energy. And I mean, I'd been doing it quite strictly, but I was fortunate that that friend that gave the book, his older brother, had already a little community of people that were doing the same thing. So I was looking at recipes. I was eating along with them. I was inviting them into my house. They were picking on me, saying, "That's not correct, that's not right, that's too yang, that's not enough yin," etc. So when I went back to the doctor then after 1 year, I asked him to take another blood test. He said to me, "I don't think that's going to make any difference, but I'll do it anyways." And he did, and he said, "Come back next week and we'll have a look at it." Where I did come back then next week, and when I entered his office, I remember very clearly he was smiling. And I said to him, "You've got good news for me, haven't you?" And he said, "Yes, Kenneth, you've had a spontaneous remission." And
Spontaneous.
I thought, wow, what's that? You know, I've never heard of that before. And he said, "Yeah, if I hadn't known you, if I hadn't diagnosed you before, I would never have believed it. You don't have any sign of the sickness anymore." So yes, I did that for 2 years strictly. And I was doing yoga, I was meditating, I was eating well, as you probably heard now. And I was reflecting also on why it was that I came to that particular stage, why I became so sick. So it wasn't only about a symptomatic approach to that, it was also a deep immersion in my inner self to find out what lesson do I have to gain with this? What do I have to learn through this? And well, today I'm a grandfather of 6 grandchildren. I'm married, happily married, and I look at myself as being fairly prosperous. So I'm very lucky to be here, and I look upon my life as something wonderful with immense gratitude.
Thank you, Kenneth. Brilliant. I'm going to move on quickly because we want to get everybody in to Anusha, because Anusha and I, talking about cancer, met at a cancer centre where we worked together in a charity. And so Anusha and I have a lot of experience of people with cancer together. And she still works there, don't you? You still volunteer there? Yes.
I don't know.
Okay. But anyway,
everywhere at the moment. So thank you, Amanda, for welcoming me into the community, and I'm very happy to meet all of you. So I guess I started my I call it a healing journey when I was in my 30s, maybe, because I was a very unhappy person who just carried sadness with me all over. And I came from a dysfunctional background, and I was this hyperachiever and controller kind of person, and was working in the corporate for about 15, 16 years. And I became quite ill. And then I started, but I went undiagnosed. no one understood what was going wrong with me. And that's when I went into research I did research into my own illnesses, my symptoms and things like that. And that took me on a journey where I started doing massage. And I first started off being a Pilates instructor, and then I became a Reiki master. And then I